If we're willing to drug ourselves to the borderline death and throw away everything that is good in our lives, that there's something within our brain that is pushing us that route. We wouldn't give alcohol to our dogs, to our cats. We wouldn't give alcohol to our youngest of children because it's toxic. Hey everybody, welcome back to Small Town Sober. Appreciate you joining me today. Had a few good weekends with the kids. I can't believe it's July. It's absolutely insane. Just a few weeks removed from Father's Day, which I have to say was probably the best, certainly in the top 2 or 3 Father's Days I've had ever. There is nothing like being sober with your children. Some of you have that on a daily basis. I have not for many years. So Father's Day was another day for me to drink. That's what it was. I made it about me and relished in my own issues. And my kids, unfortunately, suffered because of that. But this Father's Day was beautiful. We went camping. I love camping. That was one of my biggest concerns was, will I like camping now that I can't sit around a campfire and drink all day? Yes, I love camping. It is so much fun. It's so nice to be in the woods. We got to see some awesome families, some friends, just great all around. So that was great. It was really nice. The summer weather is fastly approaching and we're in the throes of it. So I'm grateful for that. But thank you for joining today. Today's topic is going to be one that addicts ask themselves once they're to a point where they feel like they've somewhat conquered their issues, I guess. I struggle with the word recovering alcoholic. I feel like I want to say recovered. And I kind of want to lean that way because to me it's like a skinned knee. You can skin your knee, but you're not recovering from your knee 20 years later. You recovered. You have the scars, but you recovered. And I feel like I'm recovered, but I guess I'll just go and use the term that most people use as you venture further from the drug of choice, whether that's, could be anything, cocaine, could be shopping, could be gambling, mine's alcohol. And I just will say, I guess I'm a recovering alcoholic. But in this journey, we get to a point where we ask ourselves very simply, could I do it again? Could I go back to that substance? Could I go back to alcohol and have a relationship with it that is now more in control? Could I moderate? Why couldn't I before? And the short answer to that is yes, I feel like I could in some regard. But I want to deep dive into that. And in doing so, I want to speak to a couple things today. I have been very careful to speak about specifics in my journey, and I'm going to try to maintain that. But in order to understand where I'm at and why I feel like I could have a better relationship with alcohol if I started over today, it's got to be put into context. And I want to speak very truthfully. My whole goal in fixing myself and putting that big Band-Aid on was to really find the truth in my situation. Why am I the way I am? Why did I suffer so much from indecision? Why did I suffer from feeling like I was less than? Why was I never enough? Why couldn't I talk to people and feel confident in that? Why did I have all this self-doubt that has been with me virtually from the day I can remember? I've just always been a doubtful person of my own accomplishments, and I'm fairly accomplished in certain arenas. And I'm not saying that in cocky ways. I'm saying that because I've been told that I need to start saying those things and not living under this cloud that I'm just not enough, because I am. And that's where the drinking came in. But I want to share, put into context what has happened a little bit over the last couple years, a year and a half anyway. And I want it to be biblically driven. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of perceptions here I can share, but that would be perception. So I'm going to share things that are objectively true. And I have to share that to put it into context so that you understand why I feel today I could have a better relationship with alcohol. But I want to read a couple verses that someone shared with me, and it really helped me get to the point where I realized I need to just dive in a little bit. And the first one is Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. I want to share this stuff because it's true, and I want to share it because I feel like hiding is only going to hinder the chance to help someone else, and I've got nothing left to hide. At first it was extremely embarrassing, and it still is in some regard, but I can't explain enough how the weight has been lifted off my shoulders, that I no longer have to pretend. The skeletons in the closet have fallen out, and they're there for the world to see, and I'm not saying everyone needs to do that, but for me it certainly gave a feeling of freedom. The second verse is Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. So my goal is to be truthful today. I want to speak to my situation and tell you why I think today I could actually have a better relationship with alcohol. Going back to the night where all this came to be, I made a decision. My wife and I made a decision to seek professional counseling. Professional counseling, professional therapy with someone who is both psychiatric in some regard and spiritual. And we did. And I'm so very grateful for this person. I would love to share this person's name, but I know she wouldn't need that or want that. But she has been so extremely helpful. And in going through the process and asking the questions, why am I the way I am? And really working through it with my wife, because I had some false accusations that I was leveling against her, that she was being controlling about my drinking, when the reality is my drinking was controlling this household. And she just wanted everything to be structured and back to where it was, because our relationship, at least biblically principled, it should be me and God, then me and my wife, and then me and my children, me and my family, me and my household. And I had a disorder there. And so I had to seek and understand why that was. So I went to counseling, and it didn't take long before the counselor realized that Jared had some issues, some trauma, some things to work through, some hurt, some damage. And so that's what we started to uncover. And it became more of a working on Jared, which was against what I had suspected, if I'm being honest. But this time, this blow up, this moment, I was set to get it right. And I was going to seek the ultimate truth. I had to have truth this time, because I knew I can't keep this cycle going. I would have a moment where I would be fine and free of alcohol, but then I'd dive right back in. I felt like I needed it to exist. I felt like I needed it to talk to people. Every situation revolved around alcohol, and I needed to understand the whys. So I did, and it didn't take long before I realized there was some hurt from a particular person in my life. And so I wanted to, with the help of my counselor, have conversation with this person. I tried to do so, and this person wasn't going to have it. In fact, I had a conversation with someone, which I'm just going to say is kind of the gatekeeper to this person, because this person just would not have the conversation with me. And one day I was talking to the gatekeeper, and they asked how counseling was going. And I said, well, it's going good. But if I'm being honest, we're starting to have conversations about blank. And I'll never forget the way the attitude completely shifted. And this person said, well, if you continue to talk about blank, you're going to lose blank from your life. Exact words. So I had to sit with it. I was telling you people, I was at the bottom rung of the ladder. I had fallen so hard, and I was devastated to hear those words, because here I'm trying to do the right thing, and I've got a professional guiding me, and now I'm left with this decision. Do I continue on? Or do I listen to this voice? And truth be told, a big red flag went up that day because I just simply put myself in that position, and I thought, if or when someone comes to me and says they're struggling because of something that I did, said, or whatever, I'm going to be there, willing to hear, willing to take accountability and understand that those feelings, those thoughts aren't coming from nowhere. There's somewhere they're coming from. So anyhow, that really threw me for a loop, but kind of also started to bring about some clarity, because that just felt very odd to me. It just felt odd. I wanted what was best for me and my family, and this was my way of getting there. And to be kind of stonewalled from being able to talk about it, and I'm just talking about it, just talking through and trying to understand. And I was told I can't do that. Well, I chose to continue on with my professional counseling, and I told myself, I'm going to do this. I'm being led by someone who is certified in doing this, and I'm going to trust my gut this time. And I'm going to kind of put that in my file the way that felt to hear those things. And I kept talking to my counselor, and ultimately it led to, I really need to have a conversation with this person. The counselor recommended that I call this person, so I tried to call, and I received the silent treatment for weeks and weeks and weeks. In fact, I really only heard a response once I did a podcast with someone else speaking to my alcoholism that they were able to listen to. It was the first time they had talked to me in virtually a year, in any real depth anyway. And it was very hurtful because we had our baby on the way, and for 9 months no one in this circle was around or saw us. And so I reached out. I tried to have conversation, and the gatekeeper was the only person that would respond. I did what my counselor had asked, and I reached out by phone call. We were told not to text, and every time I called, it went to voicemail, and I left a voicemail, and then maybe the gatekeeper would respond. Ultimately, I just was asking for conversation. My wife and I both had reached out asking for conversation. And finally, the gatekeeper reached out and said, yes, we're open to having conversation. This person had so many rules laid out, and they were odd rules. The big two were, in this conversation, we can't talk about the past and we can't talk about this person, throwing out everything that was going to involve any possibility of moving forward. And in that conversation too, they had said they were led by counsel with those things. Again, another flag went up, because now I've been involved with professional counseling for some time, and it was very unconventional to not talk about the issues at hand. Very unconventional. So I thought, what is the best way, the most conducive way to having a conversation with this person that I guess is more on their terms? And so I reached out and said, listen, I don't want to not have a conversation about the hurt. I want to talk about that. But I will speak to that, and I will do it with your professional guidance. And I'll even pay for the session. I will do that. I will pay for the session. You pick the mediator. Therefore, we're not going to my person who's heard my issues for the last 6 months. We'll talk to yours. Perfect, right? I thought that was a great way to go about it. The next day, I get a text from the gatekeeper that basically word for word said the fact that I want to have a mediator means I don't want to have a productive and meaningful conversation. And I read it, and I read it again, and I thought, No, that does not make sense. And I shared it with a few people in my circle, and it doesn't make sense. I wanted to have a productive conversation, and I wanted to do so professionally, as opposed to just having myself and this person. I wanted to have myself and this person and a third party to make sure we stay on course, to make sure we stay guided and not let emotions that have, sat for a year erupt. So that, again, another caution flag. And I started to feel like potentially they didn't have a counselor or professional guidance at all. So I questioned that a little bit and basically said I'm still open to it, but questioned whether there was a counselor at all. And the very next day, I received a call from the gatekeeper, and very loudly and forcibly into the phone was repeated a counselor or therapist's name. And I'll never forget it because it was said about 15 times. Every time I tried to talk, it was just repeated. And I just kept trying to say, okay, great, let's have a conversation with that person. And it never got there because that was repeated and repeated and repeated. And then finally, I was reminded of the threat I received months and months prior. And the words that came out were, I told you you'd lose them, and now you've lost them and you've lost me, and hung up. And I did do a little bit of research into this counselor as well, and at least from what I can find, that person is not licensed even in our state. So I'm not exactly sure how this came to be. I'm not saying they're lying, not saying that, because I can't objectively prove right or wrong, but I will still hold to, I'm willing to meet with this person, this counselor, and them, and have the conversation. Absolutely. I want productive conversation. But through this process, I've lost others in my life as well. This particular person that I need conversation with, I don't know what has been said. I don't know what's been done. Somehow, some way, people that I have had pretty darn good relationships all my life have taken this as what feels like siding with a side or another. And I don't understand this because this is an item with me and one person. And I think about my own situation. If I had friends and I didn't care for someone and we were having issues, I'm not going to tell those friends they can't be friends with me because I am struggling with that person. So again, another red flag, and I started to learn about things like enmeshment and triangulation, and it felt very much like triangulation. These people never in any real way reached out to talk to me for over a year at all. And so I questioned what was being said, and I'll never know. Shouldn't say that. I don't know. I don't feel like I'll ever know. And I started hearing things from the person I needed to talk to in roundabout ways, reminiscent of smear campaigns, which again I had to do research on. And it's an interesting dynamic. This person went as far as to reach out to my 14-year-old son at one point, even though they were told not to, and say something along the lines of, we need to be the peacekeepers, dragging my son into this while completely avoiding my contact. Very odd, and another red flag. So all of this is to say, I've learned a lot in the last year. I've learned a lot about the dynamics in my own life. The thing that shows a lot of clarity for me is when this person removed themselves from my life, which was their choice, my life in my own household has gotten much better. We received a lot of criticisms, a lot of painful judgment, and things that I believe were unfair. Now that I understand that, and I also know that I'm very unlikely to get what I want. I'm very unlikely to get conversation, any real meaningful conversation, without this sort of groupthink and the triangulation. I have to be comfortable with that. And I've learned this through counseling and really podcasts of others that have dealt with similar situations. And that is why I feel my relationship with alcohol could very well be different today. Because those things that were of concern, those feelings of insecurity that were there, they're changing. That revolving tape of negativity in my head telling me how I'm not good enough, how me and my wife need to conform and be better in certain ways. And once I was with the counselor long enough for that counselor to say, Jared, stop that tape in your mind. You've got a beautiful family. Your wife cares for you deeply. And that's all this is. Drinking, you are working on. And that was a huge part of your problem. Why you drank is what we uncovered and what we have worked through. And while you may not get the closure you want from certain people, you have to know that you have worked on you. And that really helped me. Really helped me. And quite frankly, you guys in this community have helped me so very much. I really hope you know that. The kind words and the notes and the I've been there's, and man, talking to people who are in the throes of it in their own relationships, that we can have conversations that you wouldn't probably just randomly talk to your neighbor, but now that you know the ins and outs of what it can be, aka this mess, you can talk to me. I'll understand. I'll get where you're coming from. And I'm not going to have the answers to everything, but I want to be there for you. My wife wants to be there for spouses that are dealing with a spouse that is addicted to something in some way, some fashion. It could be pornography. That's a big one nowadays. We will be there. And this channel has helped me so much. Am I 100%? No. Am I ever going to be? I don't think so. I don't think you can overcome 44 years of hardwiring, 43 really, in a short amount of time. And I horrify my wife every time I say I think I could have a relationship with alcohol that's different, because she would be devastated to go back to that life, and my children would be devastated if Daddy went back to that life. And so I guess here's what I'm going to say to you today. I feel like I could have a better relationship with alcohol. 100% I do. But I've grown enough mentally, physically even, feel much more healthy and in tune with my body, that I feel I don't want to go back to it, because at the end of the day, it is still just a chemical. It is still just a drug. It is still just alcohol. And we wouldn't give alcohol to our plants. We wouldn't give alcohol to our dogs, to our cats. We wouldn't give alcohol to our youngest of children, because it's toxic. So I will never go back. I will never go back in any real way. I say that almost to kind of give me an out. Like, what if? And I have often thought, what if when my children get married, I want to do a toast? I don't think I will. I don't think I should do that. If nothing else, because I would not want to hurt my wife the way I've hurt her for borderline a decade of our marriage or longer. I don't want to be that person ever again. There's too much positive to go back to that one thing. I think the problem is I've changed, but the world hasn't. So for any addict out there, we've changed. We've tried to overcome these things, and hopefully you're working through whatever it is that drew you to that substance. But the world hasn't changed. And what I mean by that is there is still opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to drink, to use, excuse me, to gamble, to view pornography. That's all going to be there still. The question is, are you strong enough now to partake? And the overwhelming answer to any addict's question is no. There are very few success stories, very few, of addicts that have overcome, that have went back. Because there's also something that we've hardwired our brain, and when that substance hits, it takes us back to where we were when we used it. So again, the short answer is yes, I could have a different relationship with alcohol. I do believe I could, but I will not do it. I will not put my family through that. And I want to be a source of help for others who are in that position that feel broken. I want to be a source of help to your community. If you've got a church and you need someone to speak on alcoholism and how it's rampant in our society and how we view it as being normal and how it's in every business situation, every golf outing, every sporting event. We love our football, we love our beer. I want to be there to speak to it. Just because society tells us it's okay doesn't mean it is. And I'm not a holier than thou, and I'm not one saying don't do it. If you have a good relationship with it, have at it. Have at it. Do your thing. You're not going to offend me. I love hanging out with people, and I still love hanging out with people whether they're drinking or not. And I think they know that now. And I think once you've come to the conclusion of where that hurt is or the trauma, and I would venture to say probably 90-some, I'm going to even go as far as to say everyone. I think 90% of us find out what our trauma is maybe if we try to seek help. But I would say 100% of us have some trauma. And I can't prove that. I might be wrong. But I've got to believe that if we're willing to drug ourselves to the borderline death and throw away everything that is good in our lives, that there's something within our brain, within our being, that is pushing us that route. So thank you all for joining today. I really appreciate it. I'm so thankful that you guys are out there. Please share. Our algorithm on YouTube has changed. I've been warned because of the content in and of itself. That's okay. But if you do find this helpful and you have someone in your life that could get help from it, at least comfort from it, because loneliness is one of the biggest problems with those that are in active addiction, is that we feel lonely and there's no one to talk to without dumping all of our issues on you. We don't want to do that because there's some pride that comes with not being broken. We don't want to be broken. But in reality, a lot of us are in some way, shape, or form, and it's okay. We can recover and we can move on. So thank you all for joining. I appreciate it very much. We'll see you next time, August 1st. Take care and have a good one.